Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, whatever time of the day you're listening or watching this. Welcome to another recording of Invincible You. Slightly different intro to this one because this one comes with a warning to it. I've had such a lovely guest on today called Emma Pickard. And Emma talks about childhood adversity, but she talks about 16 years of childhood abuse. So I really want this to come with quite a severe warning. If you think this is going to trigger you, then please don't listen to it. It is a very inspiring story. It's not all about the abuse, but it is very inspiring, and a lot of it is attached to growth and how Emma, many years on after that happened, she's a completely different person. So I did just want to give you this little caveat to it first. Okay, so please enjoy the recording or step away if you don't think it's for you. Okay, enjoy. Welcome to the room, Emma Pickard. Welcome, Emma. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me, Kevin.
You're a star. So just to give people a bit of an idea as to, let's start with who you are and why you step forward to record one of these Invincible Yous.
So I'm obviously Emma. I'm a 47-year-old married woman with 3 children, 2 grandchildren. I've had a long-spanning career in social care. I'm currently a manager of a residential home. I'd like to say I'm quite a bubbly, loving character, very empathetic. I have a lot of time to listen to other people. And I stepped forward for this podcast today because I've not always been this 47-year-old, confident, happy woman. Mm-hmm. My life started out very differently.
Yeah.
And I never thought I would ever get to this point, and I have. So I've stepped forward for this podcast to show people that there actually can be success stories, that you can shape a good future for yourself and have personal growth.
Yeah.
No matter where you started from.
So I obviously I know where this story is going to go to, and as people are listening to this now, there will have already been a caveat and a bit of a warning on out first. I can see immediately the emotion in your face because I know what the story is and I know what we're going to talk about. So I have to say to people again, this is going to get heavy. If you think in any way this is going to trigger you, then please don't listen. Please step away from the recording and don't listen to it. And what I want you and I to do, Emma, is to tiptoe into this really gently, and I'm just going to ask you to be honest with me around where you're at right now in terms of if this is getting too much, then we'll pull away. Okay?
Of course.
Okay. Yeah. And I'm sure you would do that, but I honestly, I just want to give you permission that you can do that, even though we're recording. It doesn't matter. I want to give you permission to do that.
Thank you.
So you stepped forward because you wanted people to know that even through your backstory, your script, your trauma, you've still managed to get to the place that you are now. Where do you want to start your story?
I think I'd probably like to start quite far back, to the age of 3.
Okay.
If that's okay.
Absolutely.
I obviously grew up in South Wales, so I'm Welsh. I've lost the accent. But I was born into a very heavy faithed family.
Yeah.
So growing up as a child, my life was based around religion. And I had 2 sisters as well. They're younger than myself. It was a very varied childhood because obviously being of a heavy faith, I stood out a lot at school. So obviously I was a target for bullying. So school wasn't brilliant. Also through my childhood, I witnessed on a daily basis my domestic violence between my father and my mother. But I dealt with that. I never told anybody about it. I just went on, carried on going to school, carried on going as a child. At the age of 16, I decided to leave the faith. It wasn't for me anymore. And at 17, I became pregnant for the first time. Due to the domestic violence between my parents, my mother decided that she was going to leave my father, and she took my 2 sisters with her, and she left me there, pregnant. She was shunned by the religion because divorce wasn't an option. But looking back, I think she made the right decision, even though she did leave me and take my sisters. I'm just glad she took them. I can remember when I was 17, my mother contacted me one day, and she said that my father was looking to get custody of my sister's visitation, my sisters over the weekends. And that was a turning point in my life for me, because I don't know why, but I absolutely filled with rage. I filled with fear for my sisters. And I said that I would do anything to ensure that that didn't happen, that they didn't stay with him over the weekend. Like I said, I didn't know where that fear or that anger came from. A couple of years later, I'd obviously had my daughter, and I was a parent, so all those maternal instincts kicked in. And that was the point I suddenly realised that actually the childhood that I'd been brought up in, the love that I'd been shown from my father, wasn't maternal instinct or paternal instinct. I actually realised that from the age of 3, he'd groomed and abused me till I was 16. And that was a very heavy realisation to deal with at that time.
So you were 17 at this point?
I was 17 when I found out that he was wanting visitation with my sisters over the weekends. I had my daughter had just turned 18.
I can't even begin to imagine the weight of that at 17, 18, as you... I mean, firstly, parenthood is a weight all of its own. I mean, it's a joy. We know it's a joy.
Yeah,
but it's also a weight. It's a responsibility, isn't it? When you have a child and you go, oh my goodness, I'm responsible for keeping this child breathing.
I know. And I was a single parent, so yeah.
And then to look back on your childhood and go, oh wow, that should never have happened.
Yeah.
Good grief. Where did
Kevin, I didn't know any different. I didn't know that wasn't how a father-daughter relationship should be.
No, of course not. Of course not. Where did you take that?
Where did I take it? I sought help. I went to ISAS, Incest and Sexual Abuse Survivors. I went there and I had 2 therapy sessions, but I never went back because it was just so much and so heavy. At that time, I didn't want to deal with it. Okay,
so it feels like what you experienced there was what we refer to now as flooding. So sometimes if a client steps in with a similar subject matter, I have to be really, really careful that we don't flood with. You know what I mean? I have to make sure that all therapists should do this, really, that there is that you're as stable as you possibly can be before we start looking at past events, because if not, you just become flooded. So how many sessions did you have with?
I had 2. I'll be completely honest. I think the thing for me was when I went in and I sat down, there was a sofa and it was full of teddies.
Okay.
And I think at that point I thought, this is not the right environment for me. I don't want to open up. So I only had 2 sessions. And like you say, I think my emotions, you see, as a child, your brain's an amazing thing, because a part of your brain can switch off so that you can live with day-to-day trauma. So it buries it deep in the back of your head. But as you get older, it's like, I can describe it, it's like a bottle sat on your chest, and you shove that bung in, so you keep all those feelings and emotions in. And when I went for those 2 sessions, it's like somebody just went pop. And like you say, I started to flood, absolutely flood. And it was an awful feeling.
Yeah.
Absolutely awful. And after that point, I became quite destructive to myself.
Right.
Because of all these feelings that I had. So it turned into me being quite destructive to myself after that point.
For you, was that a way of trying to manage some of the feelings that had been exposed?
Try to block them out, I think.
Right.
You know, I would drink every night to block out the emotion.
Okay.
If the emotional pain became too much, then I would inflict physical pain on myself to detract the emotional pain. I became quite reckless in that looking back, I'd put myself in situations where I had endangered myself. I'd put myself in quite serious situations.
Yeah.
But at that point, I didn't really care about my own existence, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. Well, why would you, when you had been taught for most of your life that was what you were worthy of, why would you then care about yourself?
All the time. I'm never be good enough. I'm bad. I'm not worthy of anything. I'm not worthy of love. Through relationships, toxic relationships, I was told I would never amount to anything. Nobody would love me. I'm damaged goods. I got that a lot through toxic relationships because obviously I went from being in that unhealthy relationship with my father to then going into really abusive and unhealthy relationships with other men.
Yeah.
That's all I've ever known.
That was your model, wasn't it? That's, like you said, that's what you knew. Why would we, or how would we know that it was unhealthy if that's all that you'd ever experienced?
Exactly. You look to your parents to guide you through your childhood, to teach you the rights and the wrongs, to nurture you.
Yeah.
That was what I was nurtured with.
Yeah. Oh, there's a question in my head then, and I cannot decide whether to go there or not, because it was something that you told me as we were messaging. So I'm right in thinking that somebody else in the family knew
About the abuse.
Yeah.
If I'm being honest, yes, my paternal mother caught my father when I was 3.
Okay. So I mean, that was really early doors. At 3 years old, that was very early, and she didn't stop it, and it carried on.
Yeah, and then I had 2 younger sisters as well.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. What is your relationship now with paternal mother? She's still around?
She's still around. I do love her because she's my mother.
Mm-hmm.
We have spoken, and I've spoken openly about how I felt that she'd let me down. I do speak to her, but I keep her at arm's length. But that's a self-preservation thing, I think.
Yeah.
Well, I have told her that I forgive her. I think that's really important. It took me a long time to get to there, but I have told her that I forgive her, and I don't want her feeling guilty anymore. I don't want to carry around that guilt because I don't want to be. We live our lives on guilt as a family, and I don't want that anymore.
Yeah.
So I told her to let that go.
I admire that. Can I ask?
Yeah.
Can we go back a little bit, and can I ask what it was about the teddy bears?
I've always disassociated myself from the child Emma. So I very much, there's me now, but there's also that child Emma that was traumatized, that went through the abuse. And I think when I went and sat down with all those teddy bears, I was thrown straight back to the child Emma, and I couldn't cope with that. Mm. So I think the environment, when you're going into an environment where you are having counselling or you're having psychotherapy, it has to be the right environment.
Yeah. Yeah, well, as therapists, we're kind of trained to try not to make the area's personality void, but to be really careful what we put into environments. Yeah. So not to put, it's like in this room here, I would never have personal pictures in this room. Everything would be very kind of ambivalent a little bit. As my style
Yeah.
on it. As my style, because it matches my shirt. But it's still fairly ambivalent. You know what I mean? It has a little bit of my personality, but it's still fairly ambivalent.
Yeah. Because there's certain, there's not just visual stimulus triggers for people. There's also, I can't think of the word now. Smell.
Yeah.
Smell triggers. And I do have some smell triggers. So it's right. You've got to ensure that the environment's right.
Yeah. Yeah, I get that. Even with scented candles, occasionally there might be a scented candle in the hallway, but even then I have to be a little bit careful what I'm lighting, because like you say, you never quite
Certain
know.
smells.
Yeah. What the trigger could be. So 2 sessions didn't work. You pulled away. Where did your journey go from there in terms of kind of, when did you pick it back up again?
So I had my second child when I was 22. And then I had I tell a lie, actually, I was 20. I had 3 children by the age of 22. So I had my third child at 22, and somebody actually approached me. It was my mum that actually approached me and said, do you know that there's such a thing as being able to prosecute somebody for historical sexual abuse?
Okay.
And I'd never heard of that. But I think at the age of 23, I was still very angry, still very messed up, but it went more towards anger. And I thought, right, if I can get this person locked up for what he has done to me, if I have people to see, to believe me, because a lot of it's about being believed as well.
Yeah.
Because you're always told, you say it, you speak out, nobody will believe you. You know, nobody will ever believe you. If you do this, I'll hurt your sister. So there was just so many things that were stopping me from saying anything, because he was still quite threatening towards me still at that age. He used to find out where I'd moved to and come round and threaten me that if I said anything, nobody'd believe. And so I just, at 23, I walked into the local police station one day, and I just said to the officer on the desk, I would like to report historical abuse. Very matter of fact. That's what it was.
I can't even begin to imagine how that must have felt, particularly at 23. 23 is such a young age to be doing something so massive. How did it feel for you to pluck up the courage to kind of walk into the station, or did you not need the courage? Was there a drive?
I think the courage. I think I was just that angry. I was like touch paper. You'd lick me, I'd have gone off. And so I just went in very matter of fact. And I think the reason I didn't need courage, because it was very matter of fact. It was always like, it's happened to me, but it was a different me, so I can deal with this.
Yeah.
I mean, I went in, and it took just over a year for them to gather all the statements together. But what came out of that year was that my middle sister stepped forward and said, it happened to me. Now, we've never discussed it. Yeah. We've never shared notes, because I can't carry that for her.
Yeah.
I only just had enough to carry all of that for myself.
Of course.
So it took over a year. It was a very long process for them to gather statements and witness statements, because what had happened is other people had come forward and said, actually, we saw something. They didn't at the time that it was happening as children, but then they were approached later. They said, actually, we did see something, but we didn't want to say anything.
Okay. Can I ask what the outcome was?
Yes, so when I was 25, so I don't know what year that was, very long time ago, and we went to Nottingham Crown Court and went in front of a jury. So it was a week-long trial. There were different witnesses called to give evidence. I gave my evidence. Bearing in mind, the last time I'd seen him was when I was about 23, and now it'd been 4 or 5 years since I'd seen him. That was terrifying, walking into a courtroom knowing that he would be sitting there.
Yeah.
And this might sound really strange, but I grew my hair in a way that it covered my face like that. So when I walked in, I didn't have to see him, because what I didn't want was a recent memory picture of what he looked like.
Yeah.
So I went in, I gave evidence, and after a week, he was convicted of cruelty to a child. That was me. Sexual assault, gross sexual assault, and he was given 5 years.
Wow. Oh.
When that verdict came in, I hyperventilated. I really did. I can remember CPS giving me a bag to breathe into, because I think it was, oh my God, people actually believe me. They believe us. They've seen him for what he is.
Yeah.
So yeah, he got 5 years, and then good thing was he's on the child protection register for life.
Yeah.
They're always going to know where he is.
How did you feel about the 5-year sentence? Did it feel enough? No.
This man robbed my childhood. He robbed my childhood.
16 years.
16 years.
Yeah. And he got 5. The justice system is questionable, to say the least.
He never got probation. He went for probation meetings, but they didn't. He did the full 5 years.
Okay. Good. So here's a question that I think people listening to this, if they've been through similar experiences, might be interested in. So you went through the court case, or the evidence building, all the rest of it. As I'm asking the question in my head, I'm going, this is a really stupid question. Don't ask this. But
no, there's no such thing as a stupid question.
I think other people might be interested in this. Did it bring any kind of peace or justice in your mind? No.
I thought it would, Kevin. I really did.
Yeah.
But it didn't. After that point, I hit the rails again. I used to drink every night. I thought I should be feeling fine now. People have believed me. He's got 5 years in prison. He'll be suffering in there. But it didn't. So that's when I went back to the doctor, and I was given counselling. And counselling for 2 years.
Okay.
Because of the deep trauma, the counsellor felt they weren't qualified enough to support me to where I needed to be.
Yeah.
So I was referred to a Gestalt psychotherapist.
Okay.
And I spent 9 years with that therapist.
Yeah.
Working through everything.
And people listening to this might think that that's a long time, but actually, because of the depth of the trauma, it's not unusual. It's not unusual. I've been in private practice now for 7 years, and some of my clients have been with me for 7 years.
Yeah.
And will stay with me for many years. It's become like an unknown quantity that will just happen. So
I never started thinking I'll still be here in 6 or 7 or 8 or 9 years, but I think there was just so many levels.
Yeah.
The brain, in how you're feeling, how you're responding, that it's almost like I needed support to rebuild my life, me, who I should be.
Yeah.
And do you know what, Kevin? They are the best 9 years of my life, because if I hadn't have done that, I wouldn't be where I am now. If I hadn't invested in that 9 years, and it was hard.
Yeah.
There were times when I wouldn't open up. There were times when the therapist would have to come and get me out of the car because I would have panic attacks. There were times where I would desensitize in a session, very much so desensitize, and she would have to bring me back. But without that, there's no way I could be where I am now.
Yeah.
If I could, I kind of use a metaphor. It's kind of like when I went in there, when I first went in for the session with the therapist, my mind was like a big filing cabinet, and the drawers had all been ripped out. And all those files, my memories, everything had been scattered all over the room.
Mm-hmm.
I needed that therapist to help me to pick them up piece by piece, file them in the correct order, to then eventually have a tidy filing cabinet where I can open the drawer when I want to, have a little peek in at a memory, but then I can close it. And it doesn't impact on me how it would have done in the past. So that's
order, creating. I remember a client talking to me about. It's a very similar story, although in some ways not bigger, but very different in that it involved many more people, let's just say. And I always remember this client saying, it's order. I need order. I need to understand that it's like everything's everywhere, and I don't understand. And we spent a lot of time trying to create order. And the filing cabinet scenario is, I love that. I use it all the time in here. It's like I have piles of paper. It's not a lot of piles of paper around here, but there's piles of paper, and I go, that's like your mind, and we have to go through each piece of paper to go, can bin that one, don't need that one, that can be shredded, or we need to file that one, need to file that one, put that one safe, or that one can be shredded, but you have to pick up each piece of paper and look at it, and then work out which direction it's going to go in. And kind of read the content.
And it's tough because you go to places you buried that deep. And you know that it's a lot easier if you don't touch on them. But I think if you don't, it will stunt the growth. It will stunt your growth. So that's why I pushed through for the 9 years. It is difficult. I don't want to ever say to anybody, oh, it's easy, it's fine. You'll go and have a conversation, you'll walk out feeling great. It's not like that, but it is an investment in yourself. Investment in yourself to go through all of that.
So you had 2 years with the NHS, which is a fair amount of time, to be fair, and then the therapy.
And the Gestalt psychotherapy was through the NHS. This was back when there was a lot of funding for mental health. There isn't now. I actually wrote a letter as part when they were doing the changes. The psychotherapist asked me to write a letter about what I'd been through, how it helped me, because obviously the very short sessions now. I'd have had 12 weeks of counselling. It would have just scratched the surface, and I would have been left with so many open wounds. I probably would have ended up in A&E. So,
it's really difficult, that, and I get a lot of people that have kind of had the surface scratched, and then they end up in here. Go, okay, so they've touched something, and now they've gone. So I have to be able to pick it up. What age did you? So you 25, 26 when you went for the 2 years? So how old you were? Yeah. And then the 9 years continued straight on after that. Right. Okay.
Straight into Gestalt.
Therapy is, I say exactly what you've just said, that therapy can be, and I never shy away from this, it can be really, really hard work. For me, I compare it against, I don't know, let's say I wanted to create a 6-pack now. That would be really, really hard work, because I'd have to go to the gym, I'd have to watch my diet. Oh my God, there's so many different elements to that. And therapy is the same. There has to be a desire or a want or a desire or a want to then motivate us into becoming more peaceful in our world. What was, when you think about that drive there, what was your drive? What was your number one drive to really spend so long and work so hard at it?
My children.
Okay.
I wanted them to have a better mother, a more stable mother. I wanted them to be able to learn positive things from me and shape good lives for themselves.
That's so powerful, that is.
At that time, that's what I was doing it for. I mean, my children are older now, I've got grandchildren, but...
Okay. I keep forgetting we're recording a podcast here. I keep leaving silences, and then I'm like, you shouldn't be leaving silences, you're recording a podcast. Hopefully that'll make the listener chuckle. So children were, you know, and again in here, I sometimes I use children as a motivator, and I'm like, what do you want this for? What, you know what I mean? I'll pull the children because I know that it can sometimes trigger stuff in people.
Yeah.
So no, definitely no regrets on that journey.
No, I can't. No, I can't regret a single thing, because without that journey, I wouldn't be where I am and who I am today.
Mm.
I wouldn't be this confident, happy, passionate, loving, bubbly person. And believe you me, I don't know how I am like this with the past that I've had.
Yeah.
But you can. I'm a great believer that you can turn it around if you invest that time in yourself. But you have to get to that point, and it's not it's not a sprint. It is, as they say, a marathon.
Yeah.
But I'm glad I invested time in myself to heal and get the support that I needed. I really am. I always thought for years that I was not worthy.
Yeah.
Now I know I am.
Where are you at now with that particular subject? Because I know that for a lot of people I work with in here, when we think about the "I'm not good enough" script,
Yeah.
it's so commonplace. Even
Yeah.
without it being attached to something so heavy, it's still a really, really common script. Where are you at with that now?
If I'm honest, I mean, you get complimented a lot. I've got a great staff team. They compliment me all the time on what I do. I still do find it difficult to take compliments. I will take them because it's not nice to give a compliment and somebody go, oh no, you know. There are days when I doubt myself, but I think we all do. I think if you become too complacent in thinking you're great at everything, that's a bad place to be. So a little bit of self-doubt in a healthy way is good.
Yeah.
But I have got a lot better.
Yeah.
At believing in myself, knowing that I am doing good and that I do good to other people, and that actually I'm not damaged goods. I'm not bad. I wasn't as a child, as a baby. You're not born damaged or evil.
No.
It's what other people bestow on you that dictates your childhood. You know, that it wasn't my fault. I always thought for years it was Kevin, and now I don't. It was not my fault.
How long did it take? And again, I'm asking this question because I'm aware that people listening might resonate with this. How long? Because again, I remember working with one client in particular, and it felt like it took years and years before that would be repeated constantly. Wasn't your fault. You didn't do this. Wasn't your fault. How long did it take you in, let's say, an 11-year period of therapy before you went, it really wasn't my fault?
I think actually probably about a year before I was due to end. Well, obviously I didn't know I was going to end it, but it was about a year into my last year of therapy. I suddenly realised, actually, you know, like I said, we are born into this world innocent.
Yeah.
We're not born into this world evil. I was a child. Mm-hmm. How could I have ever done anything wrong to deserve that? You know, so it's kind of, I let that go. And again, I'll use a bit of a metaphor, but I carried this much self-doubt, self-loathing. It was me, I did something wrong. And it was like I'd been given this big parcel from my father of guilt. Your fault, your remorse, you're not going to do anything. I ended up not seeing it back. It's really hard to explain it, but I ended up actually giving him that parcel back. Yeah. I'm not carrying that anymore. I don't want that anymore. That's who I am. That's not how I feel. You know, you might have said that's what I was or how I am, but I don't believe that to be true anymore. And so I gave that parcel back. Yeah. I stopped being fearful of him. Started doing better things for my life, started volunteering, moving forward in life. And that was really nice to offload that parcel back to him, that present back to him, metaphorically speaking.
Yeah. I find it interesting that your turning point of this was not my doing came just a year before the end of that therapeutic journey, because of course therapeutic journeys go on and on, but that particular part of your journey, it's almost like that's what was needed for you to go, oh, and now I feel a whole lot better. Now I know that one part there.
It was definitely a turning point, and it helped me in the actual relationship that I was, the toxic relationship that I was in as well. It made me realise that actually I the way that I'm being treated in my own relationship at that time was not right.
Yeah.
And I was worth more than that, and I should have been valued more than that. So that helped me in my personal life as well, to where I am today.
Yeah. So do I hear there that you were then able to then recognize your choices in terms of relationships and then make better choices?
Yes. Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
It's powerful, that point, isn't it?
Oh, most definitely. Like I said, I never ever thought that girl, if I go back to that 17-year-old girl, that day when I found out that he wanted my sisters, never ever did I think that, shoot me forward all these years now, that I would be where I am now. Never a million years. And I know that there are going to be other people that feel exactly the same, that feel that they're carrying that weight, that there is nowhere to go with it, that there is no hope, that this is how it is, that there's no brightness out there in the future. But if anything, I'm an example of actually you can get there. It is hard, it's a tough journey, but you can get there. Yes. And you can live a wonderful life. I'm so blessed with the life I've got now. So yeah,
I think for a lot of people that have been through similar circumstances, there's this feeling of it's happened now, I can't change it, so therefore it's my lot to live with forever. And I say to them, you're quite right, you can't change it at all.
Yeah.
However, you can change what's inside, and you can change the kind of like the chances are you'll never forget. No. And it's not, we can't erase memories, but what we can erase or reprogram is the emotions and the feelings attached to them. And it's that part that really, really weighs us down. It's not the memories of them, it's the emotion that's attached to it.
Definitely. And it's how you deal with that emotion as well. I mean, I've learned a lot of coping techniques through the time that I had psychotherapy. So where one thing would hit me and I would be off my feet for 2 or 3 weeks, and I mean literally off my feet in bed, shutting the world, I can touch on things now. I use the coping mechanisms, and an hour later I'm fine.
Yeah.
So it's a lot more short-lived. If there is a trigger, my response to it and what happens after is very, very, very minimal.
Yeah. Just on that, I guess, again, to offer people a lifeline, what would be your number one coping strategy?
My number one coping strategy?
Yeah. Is it a technique? Is it a practice?
I think one of the main things for me is, if you face a trigger and you are affected by it, don't go too hard on yourself. If you have time to recover from it, don't think that you're failed.
Yeah.
Give yourself a break, allow yourself to feel that. And that's fine, because you're going to get times when things creep up without you even knowing.
Yeah.
But don't be too hard on yourself, because chances are somebody's already been too hard on you already. So give yourself that break. And it's about self-love and care. So make sure that you've got, I like to listen to music. I love listening to music, very different. I've got an eclectic taste of music. But if I am feeling quite upset or stressed or something's happened, I will listen to some music that inspires me, or I love dance music. So have a bit of dance. But don't be too hard on yourself if you do have a setback.
Yeah. And again, it's something I use all the time in here, in terms of saying to people, come on, Can we just be a little bit kinder to ourselves? I was talking to
Yeah.
somebody the other week, and I went, at the minute you are literally sat there with a stick, mentally beating yourself over
Beat
what's
yourself.
happening there. And I was
Yeah.
like, why? Why are you doing that? And sometimes when we use that analogy, and I'll say to people, if I gave you a stick now and said, beat yourself, would you? And they're like, no, but you're doing it now.
I know.
You're mentally doing it now. So what I heard you say then was, if there's a trigger, if something affects you, and I don't know, you revert to type or you trip up, or don't beat yourself for that happening. Accept. I just think sometimes in life we fight a lot. We fight. It feels like sometimes we fight life. Your story is very, very particular and a lot deeper than a lot of people's. I think in general we fight life, don't we?
Mm.
I remember watching something on Corona the other day, and somebody went, "Why are we fighting this? This has happened. This is where we're at with it. Stop fighting and just get on with it. It is what it is. Stop fighting. Stop
Yeah.
fighting the government. Stop fighting the masks. Stop." I
Yeah.
was like, yeah, I agree with that. We fight. We get a flat tire and we go, "Oh my God, I've got a flat tire," and we fight it. It's like, got a flat tire.
Yeah, it's flat. We need to repair it. It's just straightforward as that. Yeah. And I think a lot of the times is that it's, especially for me, is that I stress over things that I have no control over.
Yeah.
And you know, my husband will say, you know, just put your time and energy into things that you can control, because it's wasting energy in things you can't control. So I keep that in mind. Well, I do quote that quite a lot to people.
Well, it is like your husband, again, just to pick you up on your husband, it's like an energy flow. It's like if we go in one direction to worry about something that we can't change, then there's a flow of energy going towards that. And I'm like, no, pull it back to stuff that you can control, because it's just wasted energy. It's just
it is
wasted energy, isn't it? But I think we think as humans, we're kind of going, yeah, but if I don't at least try and control it, then I'm losing control of my life. Maybe I'm like, no, you're just wasting energy and not pumping the energy into things that you can change and you can control.
Yeah, well, you can affect the outcome. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Affect being the prominent word there. Can I ask where? So there was a period where he tried to control, because he was desperate to control you over those kind of early 20s years.
Yeah.
So as nothing would go wrong. It feels like once the investigation started, did he back off? Did he pull back and stop trying to control you?
Yeah, I mean, the investigation, he didn't know until probably a year after the investigation, because they went down to Wales and arrested him.
Oh,
so he didn't know the investigation was happening. He just knew when he was arrested.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, what a surprise. That would have... I'd have loved to see the look on his face as the police knocked on the door and went, "So this is what's happening," as he was just getting on with his life.
Yeah.
And I say that with I say that with a tinge of bitterness, because I'm aware for all the clients that I work with that there are those moments when we want people to be arrested and to be brought to account for actually what they've done and what they thought was okay, and it wasn't.
And to have a jury of 12 people believe your story, have faith enough to convict a man and believe that that's what he did to you.
Yeah. Am I right in assuming that there is no relationship there whatsoever between you and him?
Oh gosh, no.
Yeah.
No, I mean, he remarried, and the last I heard, he now suffers badly with Alzheimer's. So there's no relationship there at all. I used to think, do you know what? I would love to face him and ask him why. Why would you do that to such beautiful daughters? Why? But I would never have got the answer. So that's why I think I've just got to find peace with it myself.
Yes.
I have no hate towards him anymore. I have no fear from him anymore. I just think it's sad what happened.
You know, in terms of the hate, I want to pick that up again, because again, I think people listen, well, I work with a lot of people that still carry so much hate for things that have happened. It's a hard one to process, that, isn't it?
It is, because while you're carrying all of that around, it's still damaging you.
Yeah.
It does feel good to have that hate, but at the same time, it is still damaging you. So I learned, and I had to learn to get to a point where actually all that hate and all that rage, I had to give that back. I had to let that go. Otherwise, there's no way I could move forward. And why shouldn't I move forward?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
Am I right in thinking that there has to be a turning point there where we recognize the damage that it is doing to our world for us then to be able to let go? But the analogy I use on that one is it's like carrying a hot stone and it burning your hand.
yeah.
And I'm like, when are you going to put that hot stone down? Because it's burning you. I think if that physically happened and I put a hot stone in somebody's hand, they would drop it immediately. And I'm like,
They would.
It's harder to see, isn't it, when it's inside and it's an anger, but we know it's doing us damage. It's still harder to let go of because there isn't a hot stone in our hand.
Yeah. Well, that's a lot with emotional feelings. It's very difficult because you can't see them. Broken. You can see broken arm. You can see, bruises. You can see. But when you've been through trauma, it's internal bruising and internal cuts and scars that nobody on the outside sees. You carry around.
When we think about that, so I'm just thinking there again for other people to learn from this. How do we recognize that maybe our behaviors to the world around us are driven by this hate here? Would you be able to see that connection in terms of some of the things that either our behaviors to others or to ourselves?
Oh, yeah. That hate made me so self-destructive.
Yeah.
So self-destructive. Like I said, I used to drink every evening to block out the scars, to numb the pain. I used to inflict, harm on myself, put myself in dangerous situations because I didn't care about myself. I was just angry with myself all of the time. Yeah. So it was more about being angry with myself more than anything. Because it's very conflicting, because you're carrying all this anger for things that have happened to you, and then you're angry at yourself for carrying all this anger that's so it's like, it's very conflicting.
Yeah.
But I'd like to say, now there is nothing, there is not even any residue anywhere within me of anger anymore.
And I have to say, that's incredible.
I know, it's quite a feat.
It's absolutely incredible. In terms of what happened after the kind of 11 years, do you continue to dip in and out of therapy and counselling? Do you continue to work on yourself? Where did it go to after?
Well, this might throw a little bit of spin on it, but I had counselling, I'm trying to think now, in 2010, but that was for a separate thing. But it kind of came from my self-growth.
Yeah.
But I talked to you about being in a toxic relationship. I moved away from that, but I also suffered loss through that.
Yeah.
So I went back into therapy to discuss that situation that I went through.
Right.
And I actually knew that I needed to talk about it because I'd learnt, right, I'm getting to this place where I'm finding it difficult, I'll go. And so I went back for some counselling around a separate situation.
Right.
But I recognised in myself I just needed to sit down and process things with somebody again.
Yeah. And actually the whole thing was interconnected, because the toxic relationship came from what happened in childhood, and so the whole thing was connected.
Since then I haven't had any therapy since then. I was diagnosed when I was 27 with BPD and post-trauma. So but that doesn't affect me. And I think I do find it difficult to have been diagnosed with BPD.
For the people listening, just give us the full acronym on that.
Sorry, it's borderline personality disorder.
How do you feel about that diagnosis now, do you think it
If
fits?
I'm honest with you, I see it as a label.
Yeah.
I like it as a label. I think when you have to say to somebody in job interviews that I've got borderline personality disorder, because people don't know a lot about it, it sounds quite, are you going to go from one extreme to the other? Are you going to? So I don't like it, if I'm honest. I don't personally believe that's what I've got. I just believe that I had a hard time. I was trying to deal with it. If I was to diagnose myself now, I would say that I was unique.
Yeah.
I've got unique personality disorder. But yeah.
For me, you've got a personality that has developed based on what you experienced as childhood.
Yeah.
I cannot bear the word disorder when attached to something like this. And when attached to ourselves, disorder, you're not, nearly swore then, you're not disordered.
I know.
You're a consequence of what happened in childhood. You know what I mean? When it comes to personality disorders, I have this real dislike for them. But some people really attach themselves to that label.
Yeah.
It's almost like they wear it as a badge of honor. It's like, I'm all right because I've been diagnosed now, and this is where we're at. And I'm like, no, please don't live through that label. Please don't do that, because then you become the label.
You do, yeah.
I know that we've only spoken for like nearly an hour now, but there's nothing that you have presented either during this recording or via our messages earlier that has indicated that you have any kind of personality disorder.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, if I started with that, that's put an impression in somebody's mind already. So they're already starting to build this impression of what your personality's like.
Yeah.
I don't like it.
Yeah.
I'm just me. I'm Emma.
Yeah.
I'm not this disorder. So I tend to not bring it up. On here I have.
Yeah.
But yeah.
No, I don't think it fits at all. I think you could quite happily burn that one.
Yeah.
You've had an experience, you've processed it. Well, you have processed it for the larger part. Obviously you'll never forget what happens there.
No, your memories will never fade, but like you said, it's how you deal with the emotions attached to them.
Yeah.
That's the key.
It is definitely those parts that take us under. It's a little bit, I sometimes use the comparison with grief. People get confused over missing somebody and then the emotion they feel of the loss. And I'm like, we can separate those two things out. And the chances are, my parents died when I was early 20s and late teens. And every day I miss them. Every day I miss them. Do you know what I mean? And that'll never change. But the grief itself has been processed. So therefore I can miss them without getting a well of like emotion that comes up. Or I can look at pictures of them without feeling that intense emotion. So there's the difference. I just now miss them, and that's okay. We have to deal with the emotion. And like you said earlier about your journey, that can be painful sometimes, can't it? It stuck in my head when you said the therapist would have to come to the car on occasion and kind of try and encourage me out of the car because I was having a panic attack.
Because some sessions I'd go in and find, some I felt like I had lead weights in my legs.
Yeah.
I literally had to drag myself in because I knew that it was going to be hard. I knew that I was going to get upset. I knew that I'd probably desensitize. But I gave it everything because there was no other way from me.
Yeah.
Oh, it was either that way or never learn from it, never deal with it. And so, yeah, and here I am now.
never deal with it. And the consequence of that is that then you live with it. Then you have to live with the trauma that was instilled on you for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
It's such a remarkable story. And what's really remarkable about it is to hear you sat now in such a different place. In a massively different place. If anybody was listening now that has a similar story or to any degree really, what would you What would be the one thing that you really wanted them to take away from this recording?
For me, I think it is to not give up on the darkest, deepest of days when you're feeling complete despair. Keep pushing. Don't give up. Invest in yourself. Get that help that you need.
Yeah.
Because you deserve it, and you can end up being in a better place. If anything, I'm testament to that.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what I'd say.
Absolutely. And for you, it was the motivation for that. Because on your deepest, darkest days, everybody wants to step back and go, I'm not doing this. I've had enough. I can't cope.
All the time.
But your motivation there was the children. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. I didn't want them to go through half of what I went through.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
I did it to them. And they're wonderful adults. They're so well adjusted. I'm so proud of my children. But now I'm also glad I did it for myself.
Yeah. And actually, your children will be testament to who you are now, who you are as a person, because they couldn't be who they are without you as their mum.
Yeah.
So we must never. I just remember saying to my supervisor once, "Oh, we were really lucky with our daughter. She's really good." And my supervisor stopped me and went, "Pardon? You really saying that?" And I went, "What? She's lucky. She's your daughter's who you are because that's how you created her." I was like, "Okay, then. I'll take that one. I'll take that one.
I'll take that."
And your children are testament to who you are.
Thank you.
Massive thank you for sharing that. You're
very welcome.
When you stepped forward, I remember kind of reading your text and thinking, oh, this is a big one. Oh my goodness. And as a therapist, I tread this line between being very empathic and gentle, but really wanting people to learn. But we learn through other people's experience sometimes, don't we?
Yeah.
So
we learn from them, from the people's experiences, I think.
For you to share this is just, it's like I'm hoping people will see this as a massive gift. And maybe they'll be then brave enough if they're not doing their own journey, or they're I don't know, it could be that they're on their own journey and they're thinking of dipping out of their own journey. And because I've had people do that as well, that have gone part way through the journey and gone, it's too much, I can't do this. So hopefully they'll go back in. The question's just coming to my head. In terms of your Gestalt therapist, was it the same therapist? Oh, I haven't asked you what Gestalt is either. What was it? The same therapist the whole way through?
The whole 9 years, yeah.
That's good. That's really good. And there was no qualms with the therapist. You connected and you built the relationship, and
good relationship. Yeah, connected and built a lot of trust.
Perfect. In terms of Gestalt therapy, again for people listening, what is Gestalt therapy?
Technically, professionally, I don't know what it means, but it takes you right back to childhood. So it's a specific therapy that takes you right back to dot.
Yeah.
And does some techniques where it takes you right back.
Is it Gestalt the therapy that also really connects to the body and feelings and our physical being?
Yes.
Yeah, I thought it was.
Yeah.
So psychotherapy and Gestalt therapy always go back to early childhood, as early as we can remember. And even then, sometimes I'll say to people, can you ask your primary care about your birth, please? Because I'm really interested in knowing what your birth was like, because there can be some stuff there. Or even further than back, the kind of the last trimester of pregnancy.
Yeah.
Was there any trauma there? Was there any depression there? What was happening for mum at that point? Let me tell you, a lot of mums do not like getting those kind of questions of their children once they know they're in therapy. Parenting's tough, isn't it?
It is. Many ups and downs, but it's so worth it.
Yeah.
So worth it. Yeah.
Psychotherapy always goes back to childhood. Gestalt therapy does the same. For me, Gestalt, my really brief understanding is it connects really heavily to how we are feeling. We're always kind of tapping into where's your body at? Is there any, not any kind of, where do you feel that in your body? It's that kind of thing. And like you described the bottle on your chest, and then it went pop earlier. That was perfect. Thank you. That was amazing. I really hope that people will take something from that and learn that we can all grow, and even in your really unique circumstances of such trauma for such a long time, that you can still grow and you can still reclaim your life. Because that's what you did. You've completely reclaimed your life, which I think is incredible. So thank you for that. Thank you for listening to another recording of Invincible You. I really hope that lands okay and it's not too heavy. If it does land too heavy, I'm going to put some numbers up for people that you can reach out to. But thank you for listening. Please share this with people that you think it might help with. Remember, I want to say thank you to Home Radio for producing these podcasts. Remember, Home Radio is available on, they have a website which is www.homeradio.co.uk, or you can listen to Home Radio on, there's two apps, there's an iOS and an Android app. Get across and listen to them because they do some great playlists. I love their playlists. Remember, if we're not covering subjects that you want us to cover, then please give us a shout and we'll try and cover subjects that you want us to cover. For me, Invincible You is all about growth. It's all about how we can grow as people and become better versions of who we are, to use that really cheesy, corny phrase. I'm going to go. I'll be back next week with another guest. Remember to be kind to yourself and be kind to everybody around you. And thank you again, Emma.
You're very welcome. Take care.
Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.